Returning to the tournament, we have
Cobra Kai, 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 Cobra Kai.
that's what I call an entrance and a badass name for a dojo.
Why did no one ever tell me about this show? Okay, so I got sick 2 weeks ago, and I got to make a crazy announcement for someone who only talks about movies all the time. I've never seen The Karate Kid. I've not seen a single Karate Kid movie, none of them. Not even the Jaden Smith Jackie Chan reboot. Like, not a single Karate Kid film is in my repertoire. And so everyone got surprised because I got sick a couple weeks ago, and I'm scrolling through Netflix, and I'm like, you know what? Honestly, I've heard a lot of stuff about this show. I'm going to give it a shot. So I turn on Cobra Kai. Why did I wait so long to watch this show? This show is phenomenal. I love this show. And somebody pointed out like that I don't know who like the main people are. I didn't know who William Zabka was. So I didn't know Johnny Lawrence. But everyone thought I didn't know who Ralph Macchio was because I'd never seen The Karate Kid. Excuse me. I've seen Ralph Macchio before in one of my favorite movies from my child. It was super dark, so I didn't understand it. But I still thought it was like a super good movie when we watched it in school. I've seen The Outsiders, all right? So don't tell me that I don't know who Ralph Macchio is. But going into this show, I was like, I know nothing. Already at the end of season 1, I was like, I'm going to binge the hell out of this show. It is so good. The fight scenes are awesome. The story's actually pretty good. It's very easy to keep track of. The drama is there. It's a bunch of high school teenagers and then 2 grown adults who are fighting like they were when they were teenagers. So this show is perfect on drama. But like, I can't even get started, especially because this show does a phenomenal job showing how much influence that adults have in the lives of like kids around them and the teenagers that they're like around. So you'll see someone make a mistake and then you'll see a kid try to vouch for that mistake. And the adult's like, no, I did something wrong. Like that wasn't smart of me to do. And they're like, oh, but like, Sensei, you were just doing this. And he's like, no, man, like I did a bad thing. Don't do what I do. So this show is phenomenal with showing the influence that adults have over like teenagers and even kids. And it goes both ways. It shows how if you do something negative and a kid sees it, they could replicate that. It also shows how if you do something positive, the kid can replicate it and then they learn from that and it's good. Like they do a good thing. So it really does a nice job of balancing that. It starts out with Sholo actually playing Miguel Diaz. Now Sholo I did know from Blue Beetle. I had not seen the show yet, so I knew him from Blue Beetle, which he did a little bit after the show came out. But I did recognize Sholo immediately. I was like, Blue Beetle. So it has Sholo as Miguel, someone that he befriends at school. Jacob Bertrand plays Hawk, otherwise known as Eli Moskowitz. William Zabka, I kind of mentioned him as Johnny Lawrence. His kid, Robbie Keane, is played by Tanner Buchanan. And then, of course, there's Ralph Macchio. So those are the biggest names in the first 2 seasons, honestly. So I kind of focused on those ones. Whole show kind of starts out with Johnny Lawrence being this guy down on his luck, can't get over the fight that he and Daniel LaRusso had when they were teenagers. So he's like working odd jobs, kind of all over the place, drunk all the time. A human disaster is what I'm describing. But he witnesses Miguel about to get beat up. I think he does get punched in the face, actually, outside of like this convenience store. And then Johnny jumps in after they spill his booze, and he decides to fight the kids so Miguel doesn't get hurt. Obviously, he gets arrested because he's fighting a bunch of teenagers, but he gets arrested. Miguel waits for him after he gets out of jail the next day, and he pretty much asks Johnny, like, hey, can you train me so that I can actually, like, learn how to fight and defend myself so I don't have to worry about those guys anymore. He's new to the school. Nobody really knows who he is. So Johnny decides to reopen Cobra Kai after that with some money that I believe his stepfather gave him. So he does end up paying all that money back as well once he earns it. But he reopened Cobra Kai, which was the dojo he was in when he fought Daniel LaRusso all those years ago in 1984. It was apparently what I learned from the show, because I've still not seen any of the movies. They're on my list now, but I haven't seen them yet. It was owned by a bad dude. So they talk about him a little bit through the first season. But Daniel is really not happy with seeing Cobra Kai come back. So he decides that he's going to try to just stop Johnny in his tracks, really. He doesn't want them competing at the All Valley. He tries to get the committee to keep the lifetime ban that Cobra Kai had earned decades ago. And ultimately, Johnny, he does kind of talk about, like, hey, these kids are helping me out too. Like, he opened it to be a good dude, which we, watching the show, know that Johnny opened it to be a good dude. But in Daniel's mind, he's like, he's just trying to infect these kids and get into their heads and turn them into these fighting monsters. And, you know, we also see that Johnny hasn't really been a great dad. He has his kid, Robbie, and Robbie is not... He's very, very troubled, committing, like, odd crimes just to make a quick buck here and there with, like, 2 accomplices. And then he comes up with this plan to get back at his dad by getting a job at the LaRusso Auto, so then he can just make Johnny mad by, like, I'm working for your biggest rival, I guess. Which, yeah, that'll do it. Get a job, and yeah, I'm sure your parents will hate that. But he starts to train with Daniel after Daniel's kind of teaching him some of the lessons that he learned from Mr. Miyagi. He starts teaching them to kind of Robbie, and Robbie takes to them a lot, so he decides to actually train with Daniel LaRusso. So we get some more students from the school joining Cobra Kai with Miguel because they're getting bullied or they're getting made fun of and they don't appreciate it. One of those being Aisha. People were making fun of her because of her weight. They were making fun of her like at the school dance and stuff, and she got sick of it. So she joined Cobra Kai with Miguel. So these are the main 2 students. They get in a fight in the cafeteria over Johnny's daughter fighting with her ex-boyfriend. They broke up because he made a bunch of rumors about her. Not great. It makes total sense. Like, oh, of course a high schooler would make these terrible rumors about someone. Of course, that's how people are in high school. But they decide to get in this giant cafeteria brawl, pretty much, giant fight. Aisha doesn't do a lot of fighting. She kind of stands there and like looks menacing and shouts and yells and stuff. She doesn't like do a lot of fighting. It's mostly Miguel. But after that, literally there are lines standing outside of the door to get into Cobra Kai so they can learn to fight like Miguel and be able to kind of protect themselves from these bullies that they've been having at high school. Johnny gets a little bit in his head, and he starts being a little too rough with everyone. He's making fun of them. He's going at them really, really hard. So they start to get a little bit uncomfortable. They want to kind of back away from it because they're like, this guy's just being like rude to me. Like, why? What am I doing? I'm trying my best. So that's where Miguel steps in like, hey, you know, this is a different generation. We don't really learn the same. Like, that's not how everyone learns here, man. You're being a little tough on these kids. So, and then Johnny kind of calms it down a little bit, but that is also where we get the introduction of my personal favorite character in this show, Hawk, because he's a badass. He comes in, he had a cleft lip, they had the surgery on it when he was a kid, so he still has the scar from it. So Johnny really went at him and kept calling him lip, kept bringing like, you have to have something cool to take attention away from your face, and you have to be confident. So Hawk goes and gets his hair cut into a giant mohawk, and then he gets a tattoo on his back of a hawk with a mohawk, and every time he colors his hair, he gets the tattoo color changed on the hawk, on his back, which is the sickest thing. I think that's cool. Obviously, I wouldn't do it, but I still think it's sick. So, Hawk and Miguel are dominating in their class. They're all still kind of learning as a class, but Hawk and Miguel are really the ones who are like, those are the top two in the class when it comes to fighting skill. So, they have been training this entire time. Robbie has been training this entire time. Johnny finds out that Robbie is training with Daniel. Daniel didn't know that Robbie was Johnny's kid, so there's a falling out between Johnny and Daniel, and there's a falling out between Daniel and Robbie. Wasn't really a falling out between Johnny and Robbie because they kind of didn't like. It's not that they hated each other. It's mostly Robbie didn't like his dad. Johnny like wants a relationship with his son. He's seeking that, but he just doesn't really know how at the time. But comes to the time for the actual tournament, the All Valley. So they go to this tournament, and once again, Miguel and Hawk are dominating the entire tournament. Hawk loses, and he actually, the final fight becomes between Miguel and Robbie. And we've kind of seen Miguel, he started to get very aggressive in the past couple episodes, especially after Sam started hanging out with Robbie after he started training with her dad, because, you know, Miguel and Sam are dating, but from here, he's getting a little jealous, and he starts to get really aggressive and acts like a jerk, hardcore. And then during the tournament, even Johnny gets nervous, like, he's being a little aggressive, like, this is rough, I don't know how to fix this. And Johnny's like, hey man, like, you can calm it down, like, you don't have to target him like that. And Miguel's like, I'm going to target his weak point, no mercy. And you can tell Johnny's like, oh no, like, this is how my master, like, this is how my sensei taught me. This is not how I should be teaching this kids, because he has a bunch of trauma from when he's a kid. So why would you want to continue that line? So it comes down to it. Ultimately, they decide that, like, Miguel wins the fight, and Johnny is not too happy with how they won the fight. And you can immediately tell that at the end of the All Valley, because everyone's celebrating and Johnny's kind of holding back. He's not too happy with how they won, because it reminds him of how Cobra Kai was when he was a kid, and he restarted it so he could change it and really get a different attitude going, be able to actually help kids. So Johnny is torn on the win, but ultimately Miguel and Cobra Kai do win the All Valley tournament. The end of the last episode, we see that John Kreese, who was Johnny's instructor in the first Karate Kid movie, John Kreese returns to the actual dojo to be able to, and at this point we thought he was dead, because they had mentioned that he was dead, but apparently he wasn't. He was still alive. So he comes back, and it seems like he wants to talk with Johnny. We also see that Miguel and Sam are pretty much breaking up at this point, or at least on a break, because it did not go well. Huge argument right before All Valley, and Miguel was pretty much like, I'm going to beat the crap out of Robbie. She's like, you're a psychopath, which makes total sense. But that's pretty much the end of season 1. And that's immediately when I knew, like, I'm hooked on this show. This show has a grasp, and I need more of this show, please. Season 2 opens up with the same scene that we end season 1 with John Kreese showing up to talk to Johnny, and they fight. It's a really good fight, and they go at it. Ultimately, John Kreese sounds more like a sympathetic figure at this point. He tells Johnny, like, hey, Johnny tells John that he'll take him on as a consul. So you're not really going to be a sensei yet, but, like, you can consult here and there, and you can work with me on the karate aspect. So the first class that they get back from the All Valley, you can tell that everyone's kind of happy and they're like, yeah, we won the All Valley. We did a good thing. Johnny does not see it that way. So he immediately starts voicing his frustration with Hawk and Miguel. And they get a little upset because he does it right in front of the entire class. So they feel a little humiliated. But Johnny, he doesn't tell this to Hawk, which is probably why it's so easy for Hawk to turn on Johnny later. Spoiler alert. But Hawk is not too happy with Johnny at this point. But Johnny does explain to Miguel, like, hey, you know, the way you won, that's how we wanted to win. And that's not how I want us to be acting here. Which is super sweet. It's a nice moment, and you can tell Miguel's like, all right, like, whatever, maybe I did one or two things not the way I should have. I was a little too aggressive. So he kind of talks to Johnny. But Daniel decides that he can't fathom watching Cobra Kai be back. So he decides to start his own dojo, Miyagi-Do, and Robbie and Sam are his two main students at this point. So they start training with Daniel. Cobra Kai also gets some new members, one of them being Tori, played by Peyton List, and she actually gets very close with Miguel. They start dating, but, you know, they get very close, and it's kind of to replace that relationship that he had with Sam, because Sam has taken a new interest in Robbie as well. So kind of they flip-flopped there. But Kreese decides to fan division between Johnny and his students, because Johnny actually leaves and he's grieving the passing of one of his friends from Cobra Kai when they were kids. And then he's grieving him passing away, and Kreese sees this as the ideal opportunity to kind of start fanning the flames of division between Johnny and his students. So he's also he is torn apart at the moment, so he's gone for a couple days, and the students can see that as a sign of weakness, so they get kind of upset by that. They go to a party. Tori's with Miguel, Sam's with Robbie. So when they're at the party, Miguel and Sam, they're not in their right mind, and they end up kissing. Tori sees Miguel kissing Sam, and pretty much she just leaves, doesn't talk to Miguel at all. And then randomly, we do see that when they're at school, Tori actually gets on the loudspeaker because she just breaks into the front office and pretty much immediately threatens Sam, like, I'm going to come find you and beat the hell out of you. So a giant, school-wide brawl opens up across several different hallways throughout the school. Tori is fighting Sam. Miguel is fighting Robbie. They're literally fighting all over the school. The best scene is that we get Paul Walter Hauser is interviewing for a security guard position, and he had been training with Cobra Kai this whole season. So for some reason, he thinks it's appropriate that while interviewing for this job as a security guard, the principal's like, we need to break up this fight. And he goes, don't worry, I got this. Starts beating the shit out of all of these kids, which I was like, this is a crime. And he literally just starts fighting a bunch of teenagers in a high school and immediately worsens the situation. At the school, what happens is the fight kind of ends because Miguel and Robbie are fighting on the second floor, and Robbie kicks Miguel, and this causes Miguel to fall off the balcony and hit his back and head on the concrete stairs at the high school. So it sends him into a coma, and it actually gives him a spinal injury that he has to deal with, which it's crazy. He goes into a coma. His mom is not happy with Johnny because this is my kid. How could you let this happen? This is terrible. Which it is. Of course, it's terrible. Amanda, Daniel's wife, convinces Johnny. That's not right. She convinces Daniel to shut down the dojo because she's like, karate is helping no one right now. Everyone's just getting hurt and terrible stuff is happening all over the valley. So she convinces Daniel to shut down the dojo, and Robbie is immediately going on the run, and we find out from like a school official or like a meeting that they have that Stingray, which is Paul Walter Hauser's character, and Tori are on probation following the fight. So they did both get in trouble with the law. So season 2 kind of ends on that cliffhanger of like, is Miguel gonna fully be okay because of the spinal injury, and he's in a coma, so is he gonna be okay? Is he gonna be able to like actually do karate again? So those are kind of the questions that we're left with after the second season. But I still don't know how I did not know about this show, or how I've never seen a Karate Kid movie. My mom was focused more on teaching me 80s and 90s music, not always 80s and 90s movies. So I'm catching up, guys. You got to give me some time. But I know that this show is phenomenal. I just wanted to cover season 1 and 2 today because the final part of season 6 is actually about to come out in about a month, in February of 2025. So that's going to be the final part of the actual television show. And then we are also getting another Karate Kid movie this year in 2025. So I have a time limit when I need to get caught up for all the Karate Kid movies. So I'll probably start talking about those within the next month or so. I need to start watching those immediately so I can be ready when the new Karate Kid movie comes out. But yeah, that's pretty much about it. If you have not seen this show, please go watch this show. Or if you kind of fell off after season 1 or 2 and you're not caught up on the show, please go get caught up on this show. I started this show this year. It came out in 2018. Literally came out like 7 years ago, and I just got caught up, and I think this show is freaking phenomenal. I adore this show now. Sholo is phenomenal. Ralph Macchio is amazing. William Zabka is amazing. Jacob Bertrand's amazing. Tanner Buchanan. Every single actor in this show is phenomenal. Even like they got Terry Silver coming back, and he was cool. Like I was watching him and I'm like, haven't seen that movie either. At the end I'm like, yeah, these are the villains, but they're kind of cool too. Like I don't know about this, but these are phenomenal characters. So I highly recommend, if you haven't yet, please get caught up on this show. Go start this show. That's really all I can say, is that this show is just phenomenal. It has left a severe impact on me, and especially with like some of the lighter themes it touches on, some of the darker themes it touches on. This show is phenomenally well balanced. The drama is a little bit more oriented towards like the teenager side. So as someone who has not been a teenager for a couple of years, it took me back. I'm like, yep, high school. Oh man. But yeah, not totally in my age range anymore, but it's still very much enjoyable. Still a good time. It's still funny. The fights are still cool. It's just all around a fun time. So I could not recommend this show any higher. I freaking adore this show. Recommend it to your friends. Go watch it. Go get caught up on the Karate Kid movies. If you're like me, I'm going to be watching them. You're going to see it pop up on here within the next month. I'm going to watch the first Karate Kid movie, make sure that I'm caught up for the new one. So keep an eye out for that, and we're going to be, by we, I mean me and my multiple personalities apparently, but we're going to be going through the Karate Kid series to kind of give myself some more perspective on what Cobra Kai is and how crazy it was in 1984. But until then, that's all I got, and I'll see you guys next time.